Okay, so this is how I started out the Dr. Girlfriend sculpt. And this is basically how I start out all my sculpts, right? I basically just take primitives and rough in the body shape. And I know lots of people like to do it other ways. They like to take a shape, a cube, a sphere, whatever, and then pull and drag it out and add resolution, whether it's Remesh or Dynatopo, and go from there. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're into. I just like this so much better for me, right? It gives me a lot of opportunities that doing things another way wouldn't, right? Like doing it this way, I get to set up the pose, I get to rough in all the major anatomy, and it allows me to take a look at it and make sure my proportions are all in there, right? Because they're not always. Sometimes I need to do a little fine tuning. Actually, I do a lot of fine tuning. What I'm looking for here is, I'm not looking for a finished figure. I get maybe 60 something, 70 something percent of the figure done this way, right? There's a lot of bumps and lumps and roughness that need to be smoothed out. That really, sculpting is really the only way I could do that. Back in the old days when I started Blender, you used to actually box model everything with subsurfs. That is really hard to do. I find this way so much easier, right? And I'm just roughing everything in, right? Here you can see I actually started out with the arm position that was in the cartoon, but eventually it just wasn't working for me. It just looked kind of weird, and I kind of repositioned them later on down the road, which is another good thing I like about this. You get to see everything roughly an overview before you start out. So that's really helpful to me, and it helps me make sure that I've got everything the way I want it, and it turns out the best in the end when you got the framework built up from the beginning. In a second here, we're going to start in on the wings. Right about now. Okay, so here's how I did the wings. It's going to go real fast. I just basically used vertices to draw the outline, kind of like you would in Adobe Illustrator. And then I just created a face out of that. I actually broke it into twos because I was a little sloppy, but there's a bottom face is going to go in now, and then top face, and then I just extrude the sides up, and then I close the top, and you've got a solid mesh, right? Now, my basic idea here was that I wanted to create the wings about 3 millimeters thick, and then I would boolean out these little shapes that you see inside. So that would give me sort of a guide into painting it, because I'm really not a painter. So going at this freehand would be kind of a nightmare for me. So I wanted something to, help out with the painting process. And you can basically see here that I build out the shapes just the way I did the wings, right? I use some vertices from a cube. I just draw the shape, and then I fill it in, and I extrude it out, and I fill in the other face. And basically the idea here was I was going to create all of these shapes, and I wanted to go as close to the cartoon as I could. I tried to keep this whole thing as close to the cartoon as I could. But there was something not working. I ended up googling some butterfly reference, and I went a little off road, but it doesn't. I don't think it really matters in the end. Um, it still looks like Dr. Girlfriend, and so the idea here was to create all of these little shapes that were the butterfly wings, or that were these little orange things inside the butterfly wings, and then I was going to join those together, because I found that if you have a lot of Boolean cuts to make from a mesh and you do them one at a time, it creates some crazy geometry that sometimes isn't so great to work with. So if you join all the little pieces together and then Boolean them out as one, it creates a little more organized mesh that's easier to work with, and you have less problems. Things are more manifold, and you don't have issues that way. So that was basically the plan here. Okay, now here's the last thing that I had a little bit of a problem with. The cartoon is, of course, 2D, and when you draw a front view of a 2D character, it's not really the same as it is in 3D, right? So in 3D, I have to account for parts behind the figure that you can't see from the front, where in 2D, you don't have to worry about that. I eventually ended up altering the wings a little bit from what you see on the actual cartoon, because the bottom of the wing kept cutting into her butt. So I had to angle the wing up just a little bit, adjust the angle forward to backward, if that makes sense. You know, like if the wings are flapping, right? They're going to flap from front to back. Well, I had to change the angle of the wings that way a little bit from what they were in the cartoon, as well as angle them to the side a little bit, like towards her head and away from her butt, so that the mesh of the wings wouldn't actually dig into the figure. And the only other thing that I kind of wish I did, because I'm trying to get a little bit of a hang of resin printing, right? And it seems like it's best to cut the pieces up as little as possible. Now, I have a Saturn S, so I was actually able to print Dr. Girlfriend, wings and all, in one piece. But it would have been a little easier to paint the wings if I had actually made them separate. You know, because I had to paint them on that angle, and it was kind of hard to get in there and do it nice and neat. Because I'm really excited about the next one. The next one came out really good too, and I'd like to do a good paint job on him. But we'll talk about him really soon. You're gonna see parts of that very soon. There's more on this model coming tomorrow, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask away in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.